Today we're going to talk about how to install the CB1 with eMMC or onboard memory for the module that we're going to use on the Manta E3EZ made by Big Tree Tech. So I need to point out a couple of quick things here. Obviously we have the CM4 module, which in this case does not have eMMC. This one does. Now there are various models of this, so keep in mind that 8 gigabits for eMMC should be your max. Then over here we have the CB1 without eMMC, and then we have the one with. So you can see this little module down here, or this chip. So in order to install this, what we need to do is match up right here the connectors on the board as well as on here. So you can see currently they don't match. So if we rotate it 180 degrees, they do. So now we just line up the actual holes that you see in the corners, then push down and push down. Then for Wi-Fi, we do need to connect this. So I'm going to have to place this on here and apply a little bit of pressure with my thumbnail to get that in, and that will give us Wi-Fi connectivity. Next, we're going to be using Klipper's firmware for this. So in order to do that, we have to load it. So I'm going to go over to my computer and put this on here. I already have a copy of it, but I have to pull it down from my Patreon page. So let me show you this real quick. If we go over here to my Patreon page, I actually have it up here for patrons. So if you click on this, it'll download to your computer, which you've seen me do obviously a million times, and it's now here. Now keep in mind that this is already loaded once on this computer. If you've never loaded your firmware on your 3D printer board, you'll have to load it, and remember to have a firmware.cur even if it's a blank file, because sometimes it'll cause an issue. But once it loads successfully after that, you don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to send this to this drive over here, and I'll show you the contrast between the two. This is the one that I built a long time ago. It's the binary. When it loads successfully, it gets renamed to this, and they're the same file size, but it's renamed so that it doesn't reload every time. So let's go back over to the computer for a second. Pop out the drive. We're going to put the SD card in here. In order to load this, we have to power the board. So we're going to need a tiny jumper. We're not going to use the regular power for this. The reason is because I'm just working on showing you how to load the OS, not run it. So I need that jumper for 5 volts of power. So I'm going to plug this in where the other end is connected to my computer. And it'll flash for a second while it's installing the firmware. And then that's all you need to do to load the firmware. Note this is the MCU card right here, which is for your processor, whereas this one down here would be for a Raspberry Pi without eMMC. So let me pop this out. Now we got to figure out the configuration for eMMC on this board. So in order to do that, we have to go back over to the manual on the desktop. So I've got it right here. I'm going to type Control F, then I'm going to say eMMC, enter, and you can see it's only for the CM4 with eMMC. So I'm going to click on that. You can see that they're using a different way to do this. This will not work for this portion up here, but these steps will work. So we have to place the jumpers on 3 and 4 right here. So in order to do that, we also have to worry about what position the actual switch over here is in. So I may jump back and forth because I can't see a good label for this, but we'll figure it out as we go. It'll be kind of obvious if there's something wrong. So let's go back over to the desktop. Let's grab those 2 jumpers. So these are 2 millimeters as well. I'm going to put 1 jumper cap on 3, and I'm going to put 1 on 4. So let me put that in place. So those are both in place. Now when I plug this in, we're going to have a really weird situation the switch position is this way at the moment. We may have to move this around. We're going to plug this in. We may hear a beep. So we do. So let's go back over to the desktop. And now we need to load an image or set it up to load an image. So we're going to go over here. And if you didn't know where to find the actual manual, I'll show you this real quick. I type EZ because we're working with the Manta E3 EZ. And I'm actually just clicking here and downloading to my computer and then extracting. But let me show you what that looks like over here. If we go to the downloads folder, you can see that I pulled the folder and then I right-clicked and said extract all. And then I clicked extract and that gave me this folder right here. So just so if you don't understand it, these are things I pulled down during the process of testing this out. So we have to go back over here to set up that particular situation. So I'm going to click on repositories again, type CB1. Here is where our OS image is actually going to be stored. So I'll click on this folder. Now there's directions for this, but they might be a little bit out of date. They're 7 months old. So what we're going to have to do is, obviously these are login passwords and username for the actual login. We'll worry about that later. But you can find the image here by clicking, and this will download the image or bring you to where the image is actually. So if you click here, the image that I'm using is actually right here. That's the image I'm using that I pulled down. So let's go back over here because I already have it pulled. And we have to set up the actual communication. So it's going to be kind of weird. The directions are kind of backwards in here. But if we scroll down to the eMMC portion, this might start to make more sense. So they're telling you that you need a software. So first of all, you need a driver, which is here. If you click on it, it will download it, or it'll bring you to where you can download it. So if you just click right here, you can see it's pulled. And then you have your other thing being your Windows download for your particular situation. This is the actual executable. Notice the exe. The other one's a binary, being bin. So if we go over to the downloads folder, you can see that I pulled the second one right here that I don't need. So I'm going to delete that one because that was me showing you it. And then we have the actual executable here, but we may have to set this, which I have to show you. So down here, there's an actual software that allows us to connect this device the first time we use it on our computer. Now I've used it multiple times already, so it might be slightly different, but let's bring it up over here by double clicking on it. It's going to ask me for permission on my computer to run it. So now that I have it, you can see if I list all devices, we may not see our device in here, but I already have mine because the switch position is correct. But I renamed this, it was unknown device number 1 to CB1 eMMC. So now this one's going to look slightly different for your configuration. But as you can see, this matches, if we go back over here, these right here. So you see that it says 1F3A, then EFE8, which is right here. So we're good there. Now notice if I change this, this is another device. You do not want to flash a different device. So you're going to look for the one that matches right here for this. And you can tell when you move it that they're different. But if you go to the right one, you'll see this. And that will be unknown device. So I'm going to do reinstall driver. This may take a second to actually take place. It usually takes about a minute or two to actually install. So it's going to find the device, which it should already have found. And then it's going to install the driver. So this might be a little funky, but that's okay. So we'll give that a moment. It says it's installing right now. So as soon as this is done, we can do the next step down here. This is where it gets interesting because there is going to be some steps that are different. This will find the version for you. So we can test this. I have to bring up PowerShell real quick. So I'm going to close this because we're already done with it. And I have to bring up PowerShell. And this is where it might get confusing because your PowerShell and my PowerShell might default to something different. You can see mine goes to my user directory in users. But over here, the user is the admin desktop. So I have it in my downloads folder. So we got to find it. So if we type ls for listing of directories, you can see my downloads is right here. So I can type cd for change directory. Then I can type down and then hit the tab button to autocomplete, and it'll take us to the downloads directory. Now if we do an ls in here, we should see the file that we need to run this. So over in here, it's asking us to verify. If we click here and paste this command, it will verify. This step isn't really needed. I don't know why they put it in there. It's kind of confusing, but this is the step you actually need, which is this. So if you copy this and you paste this, now you can do a universal boot. So you hit enter, and hopefully this works. So you hear that ding. What's changed now is that if you go over here, you have a drive. So currently this drive on my computer is not accessible because I've already loaded this once and then put it back into its normal format. But we've already downloaded, at least I've showed you where the download is for this. So I'm going to minimize this for a second, close out of here, open up the Raspberry Pi Imager. I'm going to choose the OS, which is custom. It's going to go to my downloads folder. I'll click on that and open it. So we're set there. Now let's choose storage now that we can see it. Click on that, and then we're going to write. Now it's going to ask you if you want to overwrite a previous thing. That's okay. I'm going to say yes. And then this is probably going to take close to 20 minutes to do. It will write all the way across, and then it will say successful if things are going right. If you got to this stage, it's probably successful. So as you can see, it's starting to write, and it's writing kind of slow. So I'm going to pause the recording until it is at the other end over here for complete. Okay, as you can see, it's almost done verifying. First it wrote, then it has to verify, so it's at 98%, 99%. So any moment now, it's going to say that it's actually finished and actually completed successfully, at which point we're going to have to make some more changes. So as you can see now, it's done. So I'm going to close this, minimize this, go over here for a second. Obviously there's something open, so I'm going to have to close this. So let me drag this over so you can see it real quick. It's on my other screen, so I'm going to cancel, and I'll show you what's going on. It's actually divided the drives. So originally it was only one drive, now it's two. So we're going to have to go to the boot section because this one is not accessible. So click cancel on that. Inside here, we're going to have to set up a couple things. So system config, I'm going to open up with Notepad++. Let me drag this over so you can see it. And we're going to have to put in the Wi-Fi router name and then the password. So I'll show you my router, but I'm going to have to blur out part of it. So I'm going to bring it up here. Here's my router. Obviously it's blurred out up here. This is the information that you need. So I'm going to actually highlight or copy it, and then I'm going to actually use it on my setup over here. So I'll paste it in here off camera, and then I'll show you the next step in this. So I'm going to pause it for a second. I'll save it and close it. Okay, I've already saved and closed that. Now we've got to do another step. So if we go back over to here, obviously it's still blurred out. We're going to have to go up here, and there's another step that you can see right here. So in this case, we're going to have to set this for eMMC. So to do that, we're going to have to go back over to the drive. We're going to find the board environment. We're going to edit with Notepad++, and inside of here, we're going to have to find that setting. So right here is the actual setting, so we can hit Control-C, then we can highlight this right here and Control-V to paste it in. and we'll save that out. Now I'm not going to talk obviously about all the other stuff in here. That's for another tutorial. So I'm going to save it and close it. And now we're set for both this and this. So now what we can do is go back over to the board and make the mods. So I'm going to click over here. I'm going to power down the board for a second by going here. I'm going to pop out these two jumpers because we don't need them anymore. So this is 3 and 4 that I'm removing right here. And then we can power this board back on. We may have to switch this, but we'll check that by actually plugging in the video display, and I'll show you that in a second. So I'm going to plug this in, and then we're going to see if we can see the display when it powers up. So let me bring that up real quick. So we're going to have to wait a second and see if this is working. Obviously it's a blank screen at the moment. So far nothing has happened, but there we go. It just started booting. So we're in a good spot here. We're going to have to actually go back over to the router in a second on my computer and log in to check what the actual IP address is if we don't see it in here. So obviously it's fuzzing out on us here for a second, so hopefully this will recover and show something for us. Obviously I don't like talking about it when it's in this state, but I have a feeling that it's rebooting, which it is. So it probably resized something in the operating system environment. I missed the actual display earlier, but now it's probably going to come up as normal. But there's going to be other things that we're going to have to modify now. So it does look like it is normal. So I'm going to go over to my computer in a second and actually set the actual configuration for the connection. So I'm going to log in while I'm talking to you here. And then I'm obviously going to blur out the screen on a portion of it as I've done before, so you can't see my router name and password. So let's go back over to the desktop. And you can see down here we have the actual IP address for it. So we'll copy that. We'll click over here and I'll paste that IP address. So it's going to come up in a second and have errors. This is totally normal. So we're going to click on machine, and normally our configuration would be in printer.config in older configurations. So it's not going to be that way today. So I'm going to click. You're going to see that it says generic Bigtree Tech and then a name. So I'm going to cancel out of here, go over to the desktop for a second, go to my downloads folder where I'd pulled this down, and I'm going to navigate to the firmware folder. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to copy this name right here. So rename, copy the entire name. So Control C. Then we'll go back over here. We'll click into the printer config. We'll highlight this name right here and paste it with a Control V. Then we'll save and restart. There's still going to be an issue. So now we have to create a file name. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to hit Control V again and create that. Now we have a blank file. So we have to go back over to the computer, double click on this to open it, or you can right click, and edit in Notepad. Then you're going to say Control A to highlight everything, Control C to copy it. We'll minimize that. We'll switch back over to here and hit Control V. So now everything is in there. So the next thing we need to do is find our MCU. So I'm going to cut and paste this. So I'm going to do Control X, and I'm going to then paste it up here. And obviously some people call Control X something else, but currently it's cut and paste is what I'm doing. So right here, I'm going to have to modify this name when we find out what it is. We know the IP address is 192.168.1.5. So we need to go over to TeraTerm for a second. And we'll do, let's see, new connection or connection. We already have the IP in there because I did this earlier. We'll click OK. for a TCP/IP connection as SSH or Secure Shell. We'll click OK. Then we'll say continue on this portion. And then the password is going to be BIQU and the username as well. Now you may want to change this. I'll show you how to do that in some other time, but currently you can look that up if you want to see how to do it. It's basically raising the rights in the OS that you're currently in. It's like sudo, and then it's like password. I can't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head. I have to look it up. But we're more interested in Klipper at the moment. So I'm going to click over here, go to Klipper. I'm going to go to Install Configuration Install. I'm going to scroll down, and down here, because we already have this installed, I'll highlight this, right click, copy. I'll go back over to the environment here, right click, and hit enter. And that is our MCU path. So I'll highlight it, right click, and that will copy it. I'll close out of here. I'll go back over to here. And then I'll do the same thing again, or I'll type it out so you can see the difference. So serial : space Control V. That is our new line. If we want to comment this one out, we can do Control / I believe. And that's the old one that doesn't matter. So this is our actual connection. So I'm going to do save and close. And now we're going to have another issue. The next issue, besides being not fully up to date over here, by the way, if you want to do the update, you can click on this and it will take care of all the updates. Currently, I'm not going to show you that because this will make the video about 3 times longer, but I'll let you do that on your own. The next issue that we're having actually though is the ADC. This has to do with temperature not being read correctly. So if we were to go over to our folder back here and we were to click on hardware and look at the pins, what we're looking for is our thermistors. So our thermistors are located right here. So TH1, TH0, which is thermal hot end 0, and then TB. We need the thermal bed and the thermal hot end 0 to have a thermistor on them. So let's go back over to the desk. I'm going to basically plug these in on the board so you can see. So this is going to be the hot end. And then I'll do the next one over here. So both of these now are connected right here. Let me put a weight on these of some type so they don't flop around so much. There we go. So those are our thermistors. Let's go back over to the desktop for a second. I'm going to close this. I'll go back over to the browser. And inside the browser, we'll go to Dashboard and we'll do Firmware Restart. Now this should come up as normal now. Now obviously I haven't gone through other parts of the setup. Those are in other videos in the playlist in the description. So at this point, I'll just do a quick check of the end stops. They're all disconnected, so it's M119 and then enter. And you can see they're all triggered because there's nothing connected. So at this point, I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone for taking the time to watch, as well as my patrons and people on PayPal that have been kind enough to donate or subscribe. And of course, they get the first look at these videos up on Patreon. So, everyone take care, be safe, and I'll catch up with you later.